So welcome everyone to our session on InterSystems FHIR Gatekeeper, where we used InterSystems Iris for Health and IAM for interoperability with EMR FHIR endpoints. So then for the agenda, we're going to have a brief introduction and then a technology overview, and then we're going over the Jackson case study. And then towards the end, we're going to have a Q&A session. So here we have
Patricia Lezpona from Jackson InterSystems.
Sabrina Sanchez from Jackson Health Systems.
And I'm Raef, Youssef. I'm the sales engineer for the account. So in the beginning, let's have a quick overview of a couple of modes for deploying FHIR in our organizations. The first and most common one is exposing the EMR FHIR endpoints. This is the most common and most direct and straightforward. Usually, the FHIR endpoints are exposed for meeting regulatory requirements such as the Cures Act or enabling smart on FHIR apps. Though this is very straightforward, it comes with its own limitations. You only have access to the workflows that are offered by the EMRs. You are very restricted in the way you can control the data, the underlying clinical data in the EMR, or how the external systems interact with these data and endpoints. The second one is utilizing FHIR, utilizing InterSystems Iris for Health FHIR server. In this mode, you're going to have InterSystems Iris standalone FHIR server that's going to pull data from multiple sources and act as the FHIR repo. This is going to be the centralized FHIR interface for your organization, and it's going to probably aggregate, deduplicate data from multiple sources, and maybe enrich it even for other uses. This offers a lot of flexibility and robustness in dealing with the FHIR. You can enforce access control policies. You can control the traffic flow, all of that without touching the EMR FHIR itself. But sometimes it comes at the cost of replicating the data. That data, you have it in the EMR, and you have it in other sources, and you again have it in another format in your InterSystems FHIR. The last one would be utilizing the EMR FHIR endpoints and having InterSystems Iris and IAM sit to its side to enhance interoperability. This way, you can have access to the real-time underlying clinical data and workflows of the EMR while utilizing the capabilities of InterSystems like traffic control, transformations, even enrichments by InterSystems Iris itself. I gotta allude, also there is another way of doing this, and for more information, there is using InterSystems Iris as a cache for the FHIR data, and we have a session on this tomorrow. For more details on that, come see me after this has ended. So what makes InterSystems such a great platform for interoperability? I like to think of it in 3 points. First, we have security. InterSystems support robust authentication mechanisms like OAuth 2, LDAP, SAML, and at no extra cost. Not that the ones before that were at cost, but at no extra cost, we also use mutual TLS. A lot of our competitors don't do that, but we do that, offer it at no extra cost. This is very important. So that way we can securely identify who has access to our data, and we can enforce access control policies. The second is visibility. So we have the visual trace, which offers a graphical user interface, step-by-step view of how the messages flow through the system, where they transformed, and where they are even delayed. The last thing is persistence. Every message that goes through Iris is written to disk and logged, so nothing is lost. Nothing is lost, even if the system crashes. And we have mechanisms of queuing and guaranteed message delivery, so that if the end system or the destination systems shut down or go offline, queuing happens so that the messages gets resent after the system is up. This is to guarantee that every message gets delivered to the destination system safely and reliably. So all of these features move over to FHIR if you're deploying FHIR, and we have a live case study where we deployed the last mode, which is InterSystems Interoperability, that sit along the side of EMR FHIR, and for this we have the Jackson case study. First, we're going to go over the solution architecture, then the design features, and last, the innovations that we had to do or create to deploy the solution.
Thank you, Raef. Good afternoon. Let me just stand up real quick, because it's easier for me. So I'm just going to describe the current architecture. At Jackson, we use Iris as a broker or a middleware between our EHR, Cerner, and any other systems that we are trying to do integrations with. So FHIR was not the exception to this rule. We decided to sit in the middle between the request coming from any external consumers to our EHR. So I'm going to describe this graph, and it's going to go over pretty much the design that is going to be presented on the next slide, but I think it makes more sense to kind of like talk about it by looking at the graph. So if I start from the left to the right, in there you're going to have the external network, and that is going to be your external requests from any of your vendors that desire to consume your FHIR endpoints. So once that request is received, it's going to hit our load balancer. A load balancer is going to route the traffic to the data planes. That huge square that you see in there that represents the InterSystems API manager, which is composed, I don't know how many of you use IAM, but I'm going to briefly describe what that is. So the components are really the control plane and the data planes. Data planes, you could have as many as you need to, meaning that you can have high availability with the data planes and scale by adding additional data planes. So in our case, we currently have 2 data planes, as shown in this graph. So the load balancer is going to determine to which data plane to send that request to, and then that's going to go into Iris, or Iris instance. And from there, it's going to go into Cerner, or EHR. That's basically how the data is going to flow from end to end, and obviously going back. So in terms of authentication, we decided to leverage OAuth 2.0 that Cerner already has implemented. It didn't make sense for us to reinvent the wheel. So basically, IAM is not doing any type of authentication at this point. So we're just taking the request and then routing it all the way to Cerner. The main reason for us, for Iris to be in the middle of this traffic and data exchange, is for us to have the capability of transforming any data if that is required, or filtering data if that is needed. The way that Cerner provides access to those endpoints today is any vendor, so an application is registered in Cerner, you get a client ID, client secret, and you get access to the endpoints. But there's really no way for you to say, I only want for this vendor to only look at, be able to retrieve patients in this facility, for example, or any kind of filtering that you need, right? Because you don't want to share everything. You don't want to open that door for them to get every type of data, any patient in your system. So that's why we place ourselves in the middle of that, in case that's something we want to do. Currently, we only have a couple of vendors really utilizing FHIR at this point. But I'm pretty certain that at some point we want to be able to do that. And even though you cannot change the schema of the responses that FHIR provides, meaning you cannot just remove some elements from that schema, but at the very least you can mask or you can decide to leave it blank, right? Like in case you don't wanna, there's some information that you think is sensitive, and then you can basically remove it or transform it, or whatever is necessary. Again, that's not something we have today. We haven't crossed that bridge yet, but we're certainly in the position to do that by having all this transfer and this data going over Iris. We have full control if that data has changed, and otherwise, consumers will hit Cerner directly, and we would not have any kind of visibility or the means to do that kind of filtering or transformation if that was required. Okay, next slide. So basically, this is a high-level summary of what I just described. It will provide security. Again, we leveraged Cerner authentication, the granular control that I was talking about filtering and transformations if needed, then the customization and flexibility, and obviously the ability to have a high availability strategy by adding additional data planes if needed.
So, in implementing this, we did come across some challenges, some issues that we wanted to resolve. And like Patricia touched upon, there was some sensitive data that we wanted to filter out. And in order to achieve that, we created a function that iterated through the entire payload response, and we removed any sensitive data that we didn't want to share with clients. We also had a funny challenge where, because Iris is in the middle, right? Iris was trying to be the authenticator for the EHR because it saw the authorization header in the request. So luckily, we're connecting to IAM, right? So we use IAM's plugin, request_transformer, to rename that header, and it was able to forward that request on to the EHR, and the EHR was able to make the authorization request. And when you build things out in tests, you don't really know how they're going to behave in production. You try your best to replicate it. But when we went to production, we noticed that we were seeing a lot of ensemble timeouts. And long story short, because this was a long issue for us, we edited the service registry, and we used that little timeout setting to increase the setting, and it solved that issue for us. Then also, our EHR has a couple of header requirements in order to get the access token from them. And even if you include the particular header, right, it would fail that request. So InterSystems, by default, does include that particular header. So what we had to do was we created a custom class that extended that out-of-the-box InterSystems class, and we just removed that header from sending out, and it resolved the issue. And then also you have some vendors that have very strict requirements that extend all the way into how the endpoint URL is formatted. So we had IAM. We created a custom route to meet their requirements. And throughout all of this, we do have some backup automation. We have a backup of our workspaces, all of our workspaces, at the top of every hour. And we can use these backups to do code promotion, for moving code from non-prod to production.
Yeah, for the vitals, so again, I don't know how many of you are using IAM, but you may have noticed that on the main page of your namespace, there is a graph that shows the latest activity. I think it only has holds like 12 hours of activity. But you would see some failures, so you get very high level information, but it doesn't really give you any kind of details. You don't know who called that request, what was the URL, what were the parameters, nothing. So it really doesn't provide a lot of information when it comes to troubleshooting. So I spoke to Raef, and I said, okay, I need to have better visibility. We're running into some issues, and I got really concerned that we're not getting all the information that I needed from a true web server logs, right? So when we start doing a little more digging, there's actually logs that you don't need an additional plugin or anything. So there are actually additional logs, but they live inside the container, the IAM container. And then you have multiple data planes. What's going to happen is that you need to run some commands through POTI to actually get the log from each one of the data planes, and then combine that log to get the full picture. So that was a lot of work. So what Raef is what they're doing in InterSystems is they're creating a custom plugin that basically it will record every request and then add it into a table in Iris for better visibility and troubleshooting, and being able to filter and make sure you can actually see all your requests in a table format rather than some flat file that you had to gather from each one of the data planes. So that's what we're looking for in the vitals. Still not complete, but in the process.
Yes, and I gotta say, this is not a productized. This is gonna be a custom plugin. If anyone is interested in having that plugin, please let me know. But it's not gonna be a part of the InterSystems offering. But we're definitely doing that. It's actually quite developed. We're just testing it. Unfortunately, before ready, we tried to test it and get it fully operational, but it errored out at some point, so I'm working on that. But if any of you wants to have access to that plugin, please let me know. Also, we utilized the deck, which is for the backup automation and IAM code promotion. There is a community developers link or like a post that talks about code promotion in that way. The only two setbacks, or not setbacks, they're road bumps that we faced is that we had implemented RBAC with IAM, and that involved us including a header or RBAC user. Also, if you meet that road bump, please let me know, and I can definitely help you with that. And if you have more than one workspace in IAM, there is another parameter that you need to fill for the deck dump to dump the settings to all of your workspaces.
Yeah, I want to mention that was very useful, that utility, because we deploy a lot of endpoints in our test environment first, and it would have taken us like literally manually creating all those routes and services in the production environment. So instead, we use that backup file and then imported that into our prod environment for our deployment. And it was a quick and easy way of doing it.
Yeah. We needed to work a bit on it, and when everything worked like a charm. It was a great process. Yes, that was it. So now, thank you all, and if there's any questions.
Maybe you mentioned it, but is it bidirectional? Is it both putting data from the outside world or only reading data from the EMR?
So there's some endpoints that are gets, the methods are gets, and right now we only have reads at the moment. We haven't implemented any updates or deletes or anything like that.
How, as far as this implementation with performance versus going directly to Cerner, could you see any differences between response times back to the third-party apps?
So there's some requests, especially the binary and the diagnostic report, was it? And condition search. It depends really on how much data there might be for one patient, right? So that's why Sabrina mentioned we had to increase the timeout in Iris. We have it currently at 1 minute. And that seems to have solved the issue. Every now and then you'll find, an outlier that yes, it timed out because the endpoint took longer than 60 seconds. But overall, that has addressed that situation.
That makes sense, but if people are going directly to Cerner, was it taking over a minute to get back to the FHIR app?
No, it would be the same thing, because it's basically the time that it's taking in Cerner.
Okay,
It's not, Iris is not counting against that response timeout. It's truly Cerner.
Okay, cool. And my last, how long did that project take? It's pretty interesting.
It took a few months and a lot of tests and trial. And I'm sure that we're still going to encounter other things that we need to tweak and improve. Like I said, we only have 2 vendors at the moment that are using FHIR. So it's truly, our work is based on our experiences with those 2 vendors. So, but who knows? There might be a 3rd vendor that we learn something else.
Awesome, thank you.
All right.
Oh, I was just curious if as like a next stage to the project, perhaps you were considering, some like dashboards to maybe get sort of fine-grained view on how the
Yeah,
APIs are being
right
used?
now, yeah, that would be, I'm really hoping that with this custom plugin, that would allow us to really dig into the data, right? Because as I mentioned before, the vitals on the actual IAM platform doesn't really provide that kind of information. Like I said, after 12 hours are gone.
Yeah.
So I'm really hoping we can get this custom plugin to be able to get into the metrics and all those things.
Yeah,
That would
that's
definitely
great.
help with that.
Cool, great, thanks.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
I think we're good. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.